Is it better to have a mech that can do a little bit of everything, or a mech that is focused on one specific thing? That's the tactica we're going to explore in this Battletech vlog. It begins with weight class, in my opinion. This is kind of how I classify and begin to build lances. At the lower weight levels, light mechs, there are some specialized light mechs, meaning we're going to go all in on speed. There are some mechs that are like, hey, we're going to do something with this tonnage and specialize, like the Panther with the PPC. But for the most part, I find light mechs, they'll have that primary weapon, that medium laser, maybe some short-range missiles, but that idea of focused mech versus a little bit of everything, it's not really into the equation, just because we're limited with the tonnage. Now, once we move into medium mechs, two great examples, the Griffin and the Shadowhawk, two very, very kind of classic, iconic machines. On the one hand, for illustrative, we've got the Griffin, stock, no variants yet, PPC LRM pack. The ranges match up. One's a spread, one's energy weapon. Essentially, this is a long-range mech, and you're going to try to use, dipping into some tactica for a moment, you're going to try to use your jump jets as best you can to navigate around and to get into a position where you can be at that like medium spot where the modifiers are down enough. You're at that medium range, so you're not getting hit with much return fire, but they're not getting in under your minimums. But this is an example of a focused mech on one aspect. But then we've got the Shadowhawk, a little bit of everything. You've got some missiles, you've got the autocannon, you've got the laser. It's kind of like a grab bag of stuff that can take on various situations, various scenarios. And we're going to use the speed and mobility of that with the armor. Certainly it's not a heavy mech or an assault, but you could take a couple of hits. We're going to do our best to avoid those hits, facing, positioning, terrain, movement, initiative. But it's got a little bit of everything. Now, once we jump into heavies and assaults, this is where we start to see really the design focus, dedicated machines versus a little bit of everything. You've now got the tonnage, and again, you have specialized heavies and assaults, Charger, Longbow, Archer, Warhammer. You have enough tonnage where you can take a couple of long-range weapons, if we're looking at the Warhammer as a template, classic mech, you've got the dual PPCs. Then you've got some lasers, you've got some machine guns, you've got some missiles, you've got redundancy, a little bit of everything at every range in every situation and scenario. And the idea here is you're going to try and bully opposing machines or units that don't have an answer to that. Meaning, if your machine can't repel short-range firepower, I'm going to go in and utilize the short-range firepower. If you're trying to get close to me, because you've got short-range firepower, I'm going to stay back and try to plink away with those PPCs. But then we get into, with the tonnage, an example, now I'm jumping to assaults, the longbow, where you say, look, I've got a lot of tonnage, I've got a lot of internal, I could take multiple weapons of PPCs and missiles and lasers and have redundancy and have like my 3 or 4 shots at long range, 3 or 4 at medium, 3 or 4 at short. Or you say, I'm going to take all that battle value and package it into one area. In the case of the longbow, LRMs, 220s, 25s, and really kind of push that out, that maximum tonnage in that direction, which if you can bring that tonnage, that dedication to bear for that, then it's a lot of damage, a lot of potential. But if something can slip past that and utilize that, get in on that, then yes, and it's assault mech, but you're in trouble, because they've closed that distance. So within that framework, I'm looking at these two generalities, and they're generalities because there are machines out there that break the mold or do different things or have some experimental tech. The question really becomes, how are you planning to operate? There's a lot of unknowns. Now, we've got that equation. We're going to sidebar for a moment. A lot of different ways to play Battletech, a lot of different missions, a lot of different ways to explore it. Part of it is your gaming group, your friends, your culture. For my Battletech group, for the most part, sometimes we say ahead of time, hey, this Thursday, what do you feel like playing? What do you feel like doing? Someone might say City Fight, City Tech, or this mission. Okay, what's the battle value? What do we want to bring? Do you want to have combined arms? Do you just want to do mechs? Sometimes it's a little bit of a back and forth. Other times it'll be completely random. Hey, let's do 3K battle value. Inner Sphere, that's got some bite. Clans, that's like 1.5 machines and some battle armor. It's like that's nothing, right? Looking at it from that perspective, sometimes it'll be, look, bring your 3K, your 6K, whatever. I don't know what you're bringing. You don't know what I'm bringing. But then under the table, we've got a lot of hex maps. We randomly shuffle and draw a hex map. Might be city fight. Might be a desert environment. And then we figure out the mission randomly we want to play. I had one game. It was a recon mission where there was a static force, and then it started to move across the table a couple of hexes, and it would fire against the closest target, whether that was me or my opponent, and you had to pick it up and take this target. And the map itself was complete just desert terrain. That's it, a couple of elevation points and a road. That's it. I happened to bring along a fire starter. I didn't know the map we were going to play on, but I was like, I haven't played a fire starter in a while. Let's have some fun. Let's see what happens. There'll be something to ignite and burn up. So that sometimes happens. That focus, how I approach it is, if there are unknowns, depends on how conservative you are. If there are unknowns, I don't know the map, I don't know the mission, I don't know the force, then often having a machine that can do a little bit of everything, at least, hey, you might not be the best in that scenario you pull in, but you'll have an answer. And then you kind of mix and match and say, okay, this machine, it'll go against this because that's where it's weak. This is where we'll hold. Or if something suddenly switches in the game, a little bit of bad luck, right? An early headshot or something to that nature, or hidden units, a revealed mission where now you're backpedaling or looking to redeploy. Having that little bit of everything really, really helps you gain that traction and gain that footing. But that's conservative. That's consistent. The specialized machines, if you do that and you know what you're going into ahead of time. I take my longbow pack. We're in City Fight, City Tech. I've got Karnovs, Hot Drop, and Infantry. I've got spotters, mad spotters everywhere. I'm hitting you real time with hundreds of LRMs. I'll take the indirect fire penalty. That's fine. I'll still soak you with tons of missiles. It's crazy. It's crazy. It's crazy. But then if I'm in a map that is very fluid, where things can be on top of me very quickly, then I have a challenge. Then I have a problem. Or if it's a mission that encourages castling up, knowing that ahead of time, attacker, defender, then, hey, longbows are great either way. And we're just using the longbow as an illustrative principle of a dedicated machine, a dedicated mech. But if it's a cash and go mission where you got to grab an objective and make it off the table, everything's all fluid, a dedicated machine like that longbow, it's not going to perform as well as it should because we don't have that anchor point where one group or multiple groups are hanging out. So within that, if you know the mission and you can tailor it, that's great. That's tactically smart. But if you get caught in trouble, if you get caught in a place with a dedicated machine, then you're kind of in trouble. Now, why would you want to take dedicated machines to one area, even if it's an unknown mission? This is where we get into your personal tabletop glory tactica and how we want to approach that. With a little bit of everything type build, you're going to be consistent. You're going to be solid. You're going to be laying down the tactics. There's less of a chance, it's not zero, less of a chance for what I call a breakthrough. A breakthrough is when something happens in Battletech where the game literally pauses and you're like, what the heck just happened? A headshot took out a machine. Your opponent tried to do something and the mission suddenly shifted, or something arrived if it's hidden units, something where now the tactica massively, massively switches. And in that moment, your opponent's kind of backpedaling or trying to quickly adjust for a turn or two. Can you exploit that on the table? Now, there's a lot of what ifs, but the first thing, of course, in Battletech, and this is true of any war game, is to identify the possibilities, to create these openings, to create this moment, and then have the tactica to follow up. But the first thing is you got to realize it's happening, and you got to be aware of it. Dedicated machines to one area, whether that's close in assault like the Banshee or long-range firepower like the longbow, if you build on that chassis, if you build on that for 80% of your battle value and the rest is supporting, then if you can create a breakthrough with that, those type of builds tend to create more breakthroughs. Where if it's city fight, city tech, and I just saturate an area, direct fire, indirect, take down a bunch of buildings, kill your infantry by those buildings falling, push up the center with the demolishers and the T-bolt, and then just mad LRM fire everywhere as we advance. That breakthrough, it's easier to leverage a breakthrough in that situation. It's easier to get that advantage. But the opposite, the converse of that, of course, is if something is brought to bear or your opponent brings something that you can't really counter, all of your battle value, or 80%, is in that one area. Now, these are just awarenesses. These are just kind of templates, because as you look through, I can hear you right now. You're like, Fritz, look, my miniature collection's good. I've got a lot. Most of them are painted. I'm happy right now. You are. But Battletech being Battletech, new lance packs and new sculpts and new miniatures and new units, your stuff is going to grow over time. And that's the great thing about Battletech. So within that, understanding some of these different builds and some of these different ways to play layered over your play style, being aware that they exist and coming up with ways to play them, coming up with ways to counter them. So this way, the worst thing that can happen in Battletech is you're taken by surprise. Something happens that you were not aware of. Now, initially, of course, in the beginning of your Mech Warrior career, that's going to happen because you're playing the game and everything's new and like, whoa, what the heck just happened? Cool, we're going to replicate that. We're going to use it. But over time, as you develop your play style and your tactica and you know what works for you personally, now we're looking to leverage that, but we're being made aware of other things that could happen. And we're being made aware of whatever lances and builds that we bring to the table, the lance, whatever that's going to be, combined arms. I want to know what it can do and what it can't do. So this way I don't get caught surprised if you exploit an opening that I was not aware of. We're a little bit in theory hammer here. And of course, the answer, the praxis, is getting in there, playing games, rolling dice, and blowing stuff up. But beginning to shift and think about, now that your miniature collection has grown and you've got a couple of battles under your belt, some victories, some losses, maybe you've played through a campaign, you're developing your player personality. Now it's becoming aware of this second layer of Battletech stuff.